Alright, hello again everybody. It is Myung here, back again with another Fire Emblem Heroes video. This time, as you can see, it's going to be a really long summoning session for Brave Male Robin. As you might have noticed when the video started, I had over almost 900 orbs saved up just for this banner. I started saving since around the time the Choose Your Legends 7 winners were announced. Because my end goal is ultimately to try and plus 10 Brave Male Robin. Spoiler alert, I didn't do it in this banner specifically, but the idea was to save up as much as I could for this banner to get as far as I could with merges, and then finish him off when his banner inevitably gets reran as a Hero Fest banner around in Golden Week in late April. So as you can see, we're already off to a pretty good start with a Leo from the 4-star special summons, with pretty good IVs too. The Leo I already had, I don't think had the greatest IVs, but this is great because now I can merge them. So anyways, yeah, I sincerely apologize for the lack of content this year. Last semester got really busy for me, so it left me with very little time to make videos. And when it came to summertime, I also found myself kind of busy, and since I was at home, I just didn't really feel like making videos. You know, I wanted to spend time with my family and doing some other stuff. So yeah, I did upload the one Emblem taking on Tempest Trials video, but otherwise, yeah, I haven't really made anything since January, and even that video didn't even have any commentary to it. So, but I am back now. This semester looks pretty easy for me, or pretty light, I should say, in terms of workload. I mean, I have projects to do, but I have a lot more free time than I did last semester so far, and so I'm really looking forward to getting back to regularly uploading videos. I already have, even outside of this long video, I already have some other video ideas in mind that I want to do to showcase other modes and other units. And yeah, I'm really excited to get back into it. So yeah, as you could see, I'm only sniping reds. I'm pretty certain this is my first time ever sniping one single color on a banner. And because normally when I summon, I do full summoning sessions all the way around, but this time, because I specifically wanted Robin, and mainly only Robin, like obviously I don't mind getting any of the other ones, but I mainly wanted to focus on Robin and increase my chances as much as possible. And as you can see in this batch, I had pretty good chances of that with all reds. So yeah, and as I didn't end up mentioning, I already got another Leo. So yeah, a lot has happened in Fire Emblem Heroes since last time I was able to commentate on it. First of all, I guess let's start off with, since it's relevant, Choose Your Legends 7. I think all of the designs are pretty cool. We have terrain effects with the dragon veins from Golveg and Korin, which is obviously it's interesting and it's another form of power creep, but I think it adds another new dimension to the game, which I think it will prove to be very interesting, and is maybe it's an area of the game that hasn't really been explored too much yet, outside of trenches and the defense tiles and trees, if you want to count that. But I think it'll add an interesting another depth to the game. And I guess segue from that, talking into power creep. So, if you've been following the game this year, it's probably needless to say that this year had a lot, and I mean a lot, of power creep in it. Yeah, so I mean, for me, it's obviously it's like you don't like seeing. I mean, obviously, on the one hand, power creep is just a natural thing, but then on the other side, it's like units become less and less meta relevant much more quickly now compared to even in previous years. But like, and I think the biggest issue with that is just how many crazy effects new units get nowadays. Especially if they have perfs. And here my first like 5-star, a Constance with really good IVs, and I didn't have Constance before, so that was cool. But yeah, getting back to power creep discussion, it is definitely, I think, getting maybe a little crazy. It's definitely, my interest in the game has admittedly been kind of waning back and forth because of power creep this year, but I think though on the other hand it does make for some it helps diversify the game experience a bit in terms of, especially with skill power creep, with all these new inheritable skills that continue coming out. Like Flared Sparrow, for example, opens up interesting ideas for offensive Cavaliers and Flyers. And Gambit in particular is a very interesting skill because it encourages a playstyle with high cooldown specials that wasn't really like applicable before because of how many units come with slaying, and with things like Special Spiral 4 and Times Pulse 4, there's a big emphasis on trying to get specials out as frequently as possible. But Gambit kind of opens up a new possibility for units who don't have slaying, especially a bunch of older units. So power creep's been a bit of a mixed bag. It's definitely not preferable, but there are benefits to it. So in regards to the Choose Your Legends designs, I think they're all pretty cool. I will say I was a little iffy at first about how they designed Robin, because I know one of the most popular ideas for him was coming with Levin Sword, and I was either expecting that or a tome. I was not the biggest fan of the Levin Sword idea, especially like when you consider that outside of Smash it's not really associated with him, and it's a weapon that has its appearances in other games. But I wouldn't have been opposed to the idea, so even though I would have preferred a tome. So seeing Robin as an infantry sword was a bit iffy for me, but mainly because of the fact that he's a sword unit but doesn't have Levin Sword. Like, this feels like the most awkward middle ground between wanting to give him a Levin Sword and not giving him a Levin Sword that they could have picked. So, especially when you consider that the lore reason behind this sword is just that it's a sword Chrom gave him. So yeah, that is something I'm still a little iffy about. I'm warming up to it. And speaking of Robin, here he is. I'm warming up to it a bit. Still, it's still taking a little time, but I think by now I'm okay with it because I understand the idea behind it. But it still would have been nice, at least in my opinion, if he came with a tome or the Levin Sword instead of just a random sword. I think the other designs are cool. I like Corrin being based on Vala, Soren obviously based on I think it's his promotion outfit. I actually don't remember. Sorry, Tellius fans. And oh, and Golveg being based on Sather, which, speaking of which, sorry for the Book 7 spoilers, but Book 7 of Fae has been kind of interesting so far, actually. It's definitely hasn't, I wouldn't say it's been perfect, even though obviously we don't know how it's going to end yet, so maybe that's a little preemptive of me to say, but I think Book 7's been interesting so far. The way the timeline shenanigans have been working between Sather, Kvaser, and Golveg has been interesting to see. It's interesting to see that our main protagonist of the book is also not just linked to the main villain, but also is basically the villain eventually. It adds a certain angle to this book. So I'm kind of curious to see how it ends from here. Yeah, so what up? Another thing to talk about. Oh, getting back to the power creep discussion. There's definitely been some interesting ways in which power creep has definitely kind of been weird for the game, and as you can see, oh yeah, here we can see the first summon I got, first free summon possible, I got another Robin. Yeah, so we have things like Diamant, who really messes with the game mechanics. I do like it as a reference to Fair Fight in Engage, his personal skill, but I can definitely see where it can become annoying. And Freyr in particular, I know has been a big controversial one because of how he kind of messes with the core mechanics of the game in terms of when buffs and debuffs are applied in order to negate penalties and basically remove false start, which I know is the big reason why he's so controversial, because false start wasn't necessarily something that needed to be countered the way that it is, and I kind of agree with that. Like, I know the big thing with it is specifically for Catria Ball teams, because this allows her to still get her buffs off, which Elamine could have countered. And I know that hasn't been fun for a lot of people. I think he should have just negated like other penalties, like stat penalties, in the same vein that like Sarah did. Thracia Sarah, not FE7 Sarah. Like, if they had done something like that, I think it would have been more okay with it. I think the idea that he basically breaks the normal cycle of when buffs and debuffs are applied to as his way of countering Elamine is definitely a bit questionable in terms of like, why was this approved of? But yeah, not much really more I feel like saying on that. So, people are probably going to ask why I decided to save up for Robin. And that's mainly because Robin was basically the character who got me into Fire Emblem in the first place. I remember when Smash 4 was announced and his and Lucina's trailer came out. I saw it, I thought it was cool, I thought it was kind of interesting that he had this durability mechanic with his weapon and tomes. I always tend to prefer like the more like unique, interesting play style sort of characters. Like, not that there's anything wrong with obviously like the normal characters that people play as, but I think it's kind of cool to kind of go for the less obvious picks. And so seeing Robin have that durability mechanic, which is so like distinct kind of to him, was really cool to me. And so that was basically what jump-started my interest in Fire Emblem. And then from there, I had watched a playthrough of Fire Emblem. I actually watched a playthrough of Fire Emblem 7 was basically the first Fire Emblem game. Because of if Derek Bittner, who was originally part of Game Explain, I watched his streams of when he was streaming FE7 because that was around the time I was watching their content. So yeah, FE7 was the first game I watched, and then I admittedly didn't really play any games myself until after Heroes came out. Heroes was what really took my interest in Fire Emblem to the next level because it introduced me to so many different characters from across the series that I had never met before. And then after that, I started playing some of the games myself. I actually started with Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones because I had found a online Game Boy emulator, and so it had a translated version of 6 of Binding Blade, Blazing Sword, and then Sacred Stones. And I went with Sacred Stones because I had already seen parts of FE7. I don't remember all of it. I still need to go back and probably play it myself. But I figured because of that, and because that was associated with 6, I would start with 8 because it's its own game. And presently I would say that's definitely my favorite Fire Emblem game because I think the story of it has a lot of, even if it's simple, and kind of obvious in where it's going, has a lot of like unique, subtle nuances about it that make it kind of stand out in its own way, especially with the characters and the writing. And it's kind of why I have like the Ephraim Emblem team because I really like Ephraim. And yeah, so that's that. And then obviously since I have a Switch, I've played 3 Houses and I've played Engage. I also have Warriors 3 Hopes, but I actually have not gotten super far in that past the demo. I've gotten a little bit, but admittedly, I think part of the reason I haven't made it very far is because it's not a game mechanically that really holds my interest too much. And I think also by the time I started playing it, I was busy because it was during the summer when I had other things I was doing, and B, I had already played through Golden Deer / Verdant Wind and then Blue Lion / Azure Moon in the normal 3 Houses game, and I was still kind of in the middle. Of a Black Eagles, which is supposed to eventually be Crimson Flower playthrough that I am still nowhere close to finishing. I haven't even made it to the time skip yet in that playthrough. But I think by then I was already just kind of maybe a little burnt out from 3 Houses, and I think I'm still trying to like recover from that. So yeah, I haven't really played Warriors 3 Hopes. 3 Houses though was cool, and then Engage. I think the last Arena Assault video I did, or maybe it was the one before that, I'm not sure, was early impressions of Engage because I had made it through like the first 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 chapters. But yeah, I've played it through the first time on easy mode just because I wanted to do a playthrough it was going to be the playthrough since it was the first one where I just like looked at the story, and I obviously didn't care much about unit viability, but I wanted to still just play through it for the story. I'm working through a hard playthrough of it now. It has been a while since I've done that. I should probably get back to it, but yeah, I wanted to do it after I finished the first playthrough and saw the story. I decided to go back and do a playthrough on hard so I could like do something, have it be more difficult, have a little bit more of a challenge. If I ever do finish that, I do actually want to go back and play Engage a 3rd time. My 3rd time is going to be what I'm calling a reclass run, where I reclass everybody into different non-traditional classes that they have than what I like gave them or what is normally expected of them in like a normal playthrough. So like instead of, what's a good example? Instead of Chloe being like a Wyvern Knight or a Griffin Knight, I'm gonna make her a Martial Master instead. And instead of Alir being the normal Divine Dragon, I'm making what was my plan? I think High Priest for them, because I had read about like an interesting idea using like Lucina's Chain Guard ability for them or something like that with Key Adept, and then also taking advantage of like support bonuses that Alir can specifically give and get because they're the main character. If I ever talk about it again, I'll figure out more specifics later. But yeah, if I do get to it, that's going to be my third run of Engage. And speaking of Engage, now that I've played through it, I personally really enjoy it. I know it's a bit of a controversial game. Gameplay is fun. I really like the Engage mechanic because it adds a very interesting diversity to the gameplay that isn't actually like super overpowered. The way the game is designed is, well, it's at least designed with the 12 main rings in mind. I did buy the DLC, and obviously that does break the game balance a little bit, especially in Chapter 11, which if you've played through the game, you know what I'm talking about there. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's really fun. I think it diversifies the play styles. Story, I know, is the biggest controversial point for Engage, because the story, I'm not going to beat around the bush. It is definitely very like cheesy anime sort of story, especially compared to like previous other games that were maybe a bit more like serious. But I personally still really like the story. I actually did not think it. I actually liked it, I think, a bit more than most other people did. It had its really good moments. I like Alir as a protagonist because I think their unique status as being like a divine dragon puts her, and like, learning to obviously like use the rings to their power, but then like in the turning points know when to like rely on other people and their friends and help them is really nice. So yeah, I personally didn't mind it that much. And the thing is like, if I know like one of the biggest debates has been Three Houses versus Engage, because obviously they're both the games on the Switch, they're both the most recent Fire Emblems, stuff like that. To be honest, obviously both have their good and low points, but Engage has kind of honestly just been more fun for me. And I think part of that is because both have their own senses of replayability, but the problem with Three Houses' idea of replayability is that you're forced to kind of go through, especially because it has all of the different storylines to it, depending on what route you pick. You have to kind of sit through the same story stuff each and every single time if you really want to get the full story. And it's definitely a bit of a drag to go through. And it's definitely not helped by the fact that the pre-time skips segment of each route is basically the same every single time. Same quest, same basic storyline, just maybe with different responses from the lords because they have different personalities, etc., etc. And the monthly like class system, having to go through that every single time. Whereas with Engage, even though there's not much replayability in terms of story, because the story is the same every time, you could still, especially with the wide variety of characters and classes and the emblem rings, you can find different ways to diversify and spice up the gameplay itself, and that gives you a lot of easy replayability. Like the fact that I'm thinking of doing a third game playthrough of Engage with, less traditional classes is something that's, I think, a lot. I mean, not that Three Houses can't do something like that, but I think it's a little harder to maybe see. And at least for me, one of the things I've never been a fan of in Three Houses is how complicated the like all of the different gameplay functions of it are. Like, you have gambits, you have battalions, you have combat arts, and obviously those are all really cool, but it's a lot to try and sort through, and the game doesn't really, at least from what my experience, doesn't give you a whole lot to help you sort through all of it. Whereas with Engage, you really just have to worry about the character, the class, the ring, and which is easily, the rings themselves are pretty easy to like remember, and then like any extra skills you inherit. So it's a lot easier to kind of track and keep and follow and like keep, like I even have a spreadsheet of like all of the different classes I want to put units in and what skills I want to give them. And that's a lot easier for me to follow than trying to think through everything for Three Houses. Especially when you have like all of the different class options there that like all require their own, like if you want to make someone like a bishop, you have to put them through a specific set of lessons for a certain amount of months. It obviously, like I sound like I'm giving Three Houses a lot more flack than maybe it deserves, because I think all of those mechanics are kind of cool in at least for that one game. But if you're talking about the idea of like replayability, I think Engage's more streamlined, or at least simpler process makes it at least easier to follow and less of a slog. But obviously both have their strengths and weaknesses. Three Houses is, I'm not going to say Three Houses isn't the better game in terms of storytelling, because it is, especially with how diverse the world is. But I will say that is kind of also the thing that kind of makes it harder for me to stay engaged, no pun intended, with Three Houses storyline, is the fact that there is just so much to keep track of with all of the different routes and all of the different elements of lore and character development that are revealed in each one. Like, if you look even just online at the discussions of Three Houses, you'll see, like, the fact that they're still going on and there's still, like, so much to unpack every single time someone brings it up, definitely gets to be a lot by the end of it all. Whereas at least with Engage's story, like, yeah, there's still stuff to discuss, but at least it's because it's only one storyline and it's a pretty easy storyline to understand. It's not like you're going to be having like a bunch of discussions about like the lore, super in depth and stuff like that. But anyways, that's just me. That's my opinion of Engage. I would probably rank it like 6 or 7 out of 10, but like a good 6 or 7 out of 10. Three Houses is probably an 8 out of 10, or slightly higher, admittedly. But I would still say that I liked Engage. I think I know we can also talk about the idea of a genealogy remake. So for those of you who don't know, in the game files for Engage, if I remember right, Engage is listed as 19 or 18. There's an internal listing for each Fire Emblem game that says like Iron and then the game number based on this which one in the series it is. Iron because the chemical element, or iron, the chemical symbol is Fe, which is Fire Emblem. It's a pun, joke, if you will. But interestingly, Engage's internal listing skips a number after Three Houses. I forget the specific numbers, but it's essentially like saying if Three Houses is 16, Engage is 18. So there's a blank spot for whatever Iron, I think 17 is. And a lot of people are hypothesizing that that is the symbol of a genealogy remake. Because A, it would be the next game in the series to remake if they're going in order, because they've already done FE1 and FE3. FE1 and FE3 on the DS. They remade Gaiden as Echo Shadows of Valentia on the 3DS, so Genealogy of the Holy War and or Thracia would be the next ones in line. And this is kind of interesting that I'm bringing this up now, because this is only a couple of days after the Nintendo Direct that just happened, where a lot of people, myself included, were hoping that a Genealogy remake might be announced. Because at this point, we basically have the evidence that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And it really didn't help. I think it definitely didn't help a lot of people's hype that Fire Emblem Heroes just had a Genealogy of the Holy War banner. So announced the day before the Direct happened. So the idea was like, oh, maybe they're doing this as a cross promotion with the remake they're gonna announce. Unfortunately, that did not come true. But I think which is a little disappointing. But I think at this point, it's just it's just a matter of when, not if. And I think it does also make sense that it hasn't been at least it hasn't been announced yet, because Fire Emblem is usually not one of those series where it can give out another game basically like every year. It's not really designed to be that way, and we already had Engage in January, so and I think especially for Genealogy of the Holy War, because of how expansive it is, like its scope is noticeably bigger, I think, compared to most other Fire Emblem games. So I could definitely see where it would take a lot of time for it to develop and come out. So we'll just have to wait and see. I could see it at the earliest coming out like late 2024, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see if/when it does happen. I'm very excited for the idea of it. I know it's like one of the most infamous games in the series because of just its depth, its lore, the way it carries itself across 2 different acts with different generations of characters. And I know like Three Houses took a lot of inspiration from it, so I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with it. I don't know a whole lot about Genealogy to give an opinion about like things like how faithful I want the remake to be, what I expect out of it, etc. I know like I've seen obviously discussions of what people want out of a remake, and so I could obviously say like, oh, I want like some of the same things they do because it makes sense, but it wouldn't really be my opinion fully. It would just be kind of me repeating what other people have said. But yeah, I'm excited for that idea. We'll see what happens with it. Yeah. So as you can see by now, I've gotten Robin up to +3. Or no, +2. I've pulled 3 copies of him. Apologies. My ultimate goal, obviously, is to get, as I said earlier, was to get him to +10. And when he does, I'm definitely going to put him in my arena car. Obviously. Not even just because he himself is good, but because the support he provides is also really good. That's the other thing, actually, about this year's Choose Your Legends units that I really like. Each of them has a very like unique play style and brings some unique tools to the table. Like Robin brings Rally Spectrum and Gambit, which help like support units that don't have slaying, which is a lot of the older units in particular. Brave Soren comes with a Sign Decoy, which can make anybody basically into a savior unit. Golveg has her ability to, how do I put this? Keep attack multiple times in a turn, a la Leaf, Legendary Leaf, and Harmonic Leaf. And Corrin has being just a giant stat ball and bringing Divine Vein Stone. So yeah, they're all very good. They're all very unique. And I think that's going to be the big thing that helps this Choose Your Legends age well, is that they're all unique. And they all have unique ways of not just being really strong, but also supporting other people. Or at least like bringing good fodder and bringing unique stuff at least. So they're going to even have value even outside of themselves. So yeah, as you saw, I pulled another Brave Male Robin, and he was plus speed, which I was really happy about. Yeah, when I get him fully merged up, he'll be part of my Arena Core. Speaking of which, I don't think I had an older video that was like this, or that mentioned this, but I actually managed. Echidna has been replaced on my Arena Core with female Shez. I actually managed to pull enough copies to make a plus 10 version of her. And so because of her higher BST, and because at the time she had a perf and Echidna didn't, she replaced Echidna on my Arena Core. I was actually kind of surprised how easy it was for me to get multiple copies of Shez. I still pull actually a good amount of copies, like to this day when I pull on greens. Because I know, like, because she was an instant demote and she didn't have a focus banner, or she wasn't a focus unit on any banner, it was harder for people to pull her. I know that's like one of the most infamous problems with instant demotes, like even Lapis. As you see, I've pulled a couple of Lapis in this banner, actually, but like, generally speaking, Lapis is not exactly easy to pull because she's an instant demote. So the idea that I was able to plus 10 Shez was pretty crazy to me. Her build currently isn't anything too crazy. I definitely plan to expand on it when I get the fodder, but yeah, it's nice to still have her regardless. Once I get to Robin to plus 10, he'll probably end up replacing Young Innis, because Young Innis is probably I guess not the weakest, but definitely like the one I would probably replace the most, because Noe and Shez both have good BST, and Aversa has Ardul Flying 4, and Innis admittedly has also kind of started falling off a little in terms of how good he is, just because of all the power creep and the tanks that have come out recently, making it harder for him to really pierce through them. But yeah, that's gonna be my plan once I get Robin to plus 10. Actually, speaking though of Shez versus Echidna did get a weapon refine recently. That was pretty cool, because her refine was actually really good for a demote. The fact that it has damage reflection, unity, healing, and extra special charges is really good. She is not quite yet. She's not gonna. I'm still probably gonna use Shez over her, only because Shez has more BST and so will get me more points in arena. But yeah, Echidna is definitely very useful now, and I'm very happy to get her, since I have a plus 10 version of her. Ross also got a weapon refined the month before Echidna. I know people weren't super happy about it, because it's definitely not anywhere near as strong as Echidna's. But I personally didn't mind it as much. I thought it was nice. It gave him... The thing I like about it is his survivability. Like the fact that... Or... It does heal him, which... I know people didn't like because it messed with Vantage strats, but I personally was never the biggest fan of Vantage strats anyway, because I think in this day and age, especially with how much damage reduction and stat stacking goes on, it's a little unreliable unless you're someone like Ninja Camilla who can very easily pull that off. Or Altina, or the Altinas can also do that because they pretty reliably, but otherwise, like normal Vantage, like the skill, is not the most reliable thing in this day and age. So I personally wasn't super mad about the fact that it didn't work well with Vantage strats, and I actually liked like the true damage from it and stuff like that, relying on his HP, because that is kind of one of Ross's biggest strengths. But yeah, I'm not gonna say that, even though I don't mind his refined as much as other people, I'm not gonna say that it's better than Echidna's. Echidna definitely made out like a bandit, ironically enough, with her refine. So yeah, as you can see, this ended up being a pretty good summoning session for me. A lot of the 5 stars were 4-star special summons, but I can't really be mad at that because there were some really good ones in there and I could merge up some units. Speaking of which, you'll notice it's funny, I have 2 young Tikis, and spoiler, I pull a 3rd one later on in this video, and that actually has taken me from a +5 young Tiki to a +8 young Tiki. So yeah, I'm actually very close to finishing having a +10 not Brave, young Tiki. I actually have quite a few, not too many of them were on this list, but I have quite a few really old 5 stars that I like to make, that I have as kind of like eventual +10 projects. They're not ones that I'm really like trying for super hard, but they're ones that, like, if I do get them or get to +10 would be really nice. I currently have, let's see, Brave Hector at +7, Brave Ike at, let me double check, hold on. I have Brave Hector at +7. I have Brave Ike at, also at +7, excuse me. Brave Lynn at +6, Brave Roy at +5, Deirdre at +5, Leaf and Ike and Sigurd, Ninian and Brave Micaiah at +4, and then it's +3s down. But yeah, so Brave Hector, now young Tiki, and Brave Ike and Brave Lynn are going to be the biggest ones I'm going for, because I also have Summer Ash at +6 because I would like to +10 him one day, but I don't see that being super likely because I don't know how often I'm going to be summoning on his banner anymore to try and get him. I could if I wanted to, but I think at this point I have other priorities I'd rather go for instead. But yeah, that's the summoning session for this video. Some of the other ideas I have in mind are going to be Tempest Trial showcases, Seer Snare showcases. That actually, yeah, that reminds me. Seer Snare is a mode that came out in between my recording, or that has come out since my last Arena Assault video that I did. And it has definitely become one of my absolute favorite modes in Fire Emblem Heroes, and I think a lot of people would agree with that because it's very fun, it's very unique, it allows you to pull off some really strong, stupidly strong skill combinations that you can't pull off otherwise. It's just a really fun mode to work through. Actually, for the first one, since it was Awakening theme, I was going to do an Awakening Gen 2 theme. So my Seer Snare videos are going to be all theme team videos. And I was going to do one for the first Seer Snare with Awakening Gen 2, so it was going to have Legendary Lucina, Owain, Spring Severa, and I think yeah, Spring and Ego. But I just never got around to recording that, unfortunately. I have one in mind for the one that's going on right now with Genealogy and Fate's characters. I'll see if I get that out. If I don't, it's whatever. I know I'm cutting it a little short, and I'm spending a lot of time focused. I spent a lot of time editing this video. But yeah, that's definitely one of the... I love that mode. It's really fun. And I'm definitely looking forward to making content for it. And speaking of YouTube content, if you guys saw, I have two videos that are not Fire Emblem themed. They are different versions of We Don't Talk About Bruno, but every time they say, from Disney's Encanto, but every time they say Bruno, it changes version. And the first version of that video that I made reached over 150,000 views. And that blew me away because, I mean, it makes sense because I did it around the time when Encanto was still really big, and obviously that song was a really big hit. So it made sense that it eventually got that popular. But it surprised me because for a good like 6 to 8 months after it came out, it was only kind of like going up slowly and steadily, which I wasn't really surprised by because it was my first video ever made. And I'm, it's a small hobbyist YouTube creator, and I wasn't certain how many people would see it. But then once it reached, I think 500 or something like that, it really started going up and up and up, and it really caught on the last like good couple of months. And if you're watching this as well, which I doubt, I don't know how big the overlap is between Disney fans and Fire Emblem fans, but if you are watching this and you also contributed to all those views on that video, I thank you. I do really appreciate it. I don't think I'll ever not be blown away by how popular that video got in such a short amount of time, but I will always be grateful for it. And thank you to you guys for contributing to that. And yeah, we're getting close to the end of the video here. You might be asking like how I'm able to do so much summoning without like having to worry about barracks. I admittedly just ended up cutting out all the footage of me or like turning units into manuals and stuff like that. I just didn't think it was all that necessary to include here, so I just wanted it to be all about the summoning. And I did actually do a little bit more summoning. I saved up some orbs for the last day of the banner. I'm not entirely sure yet if that'll end up being a part 2. I recorded the footage, but I don't know if I'm going to end up making a video out of it just because of how long this video took to edit and upload. We'll see. I'll just tell you that I did get another Brave Male Robin in the middle of that summoning. So combine that with all the ones I got from this session, I now have a +6 Brave Male Robin, which is about where I expected him to be. I was only thinking of like +4 or +5 by the time this banner ended, but I got him up to +6, which is nice, and hopefully I can finish him off during Hero Fest. So yeah, that was this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good day.